we are going to have to shift our focus a bit, this time to environmental policy. It was a big focus of Secretary of the Interior and former New Mexico Congresswoman Deb Haaland's speech last week in Chicago. We're going to play you some of the introduction to that speech now, where Haaland emphasized her indigenous identity and her home state of New Mexico.
Guwatsi Halpa, Duhinamet Etzakiwitsa Shuimi Hanu. In my Karis language, greetings, friends and family. My name is Kresh Turquoise, and I'm from the Turquoise clan. 35 generations ago, my ancestors built lives in the high desert of New Mexico. I am on this stage tonight because of them. While fishing with my dad and running through the desert with my cousins, I learned that we have a responsibility to take care of our planet.
Now, Sean, you were in the convention hall when Secretary Haaland took the podium. How was she received beyond what we saw in that video from New Mexico's delegates? And did others in the hall acknowledge or appreciate her introduction in Karis?
Yeah, Secretary Haaland, number one, the others in the hall did appreciate and understand it. And I was sitting next to, I'm from Laguna Pueblo, like Secretary Haaland is as well. I was working with Sean Spruce, who's also a member of the Laguna Pueblo. And so when she did her introduction, asking us how we're doing, my co-host, responded as we're taught to do when somebody asks how you're doing. And the response is, we're doing fine. And from there, the rest of it, I did notice that throughout the whole convention, Secretary Haaland was everywhere in the United Center where the convention took place. It's where the Chicago Bulls play. And so she was well received and always had a crowd around her. A lot of people still want to know what she's about, who she is. And then the many Native people that were at the convention for the Democrats in Chicago all had an effort to try and go find her, take a photo, take a selfie, and she seemingly was always willing to take that on. And so pretty solid response, I would say, from what she represents, what she's trying to get folded into the Democratic Party. As we understand, the Native American vote in 2020 has been praised for giving a lot of slim victories, and even here in New Mexico in terms of down ticket, not just a presidential race like we saw in Arizona. So I think that's also something to signify with the Democratic Party, is the importance that they know the Native vote is to winning this election.
Okay. Now I want to stick with you for just a second. That growth and acknowledgement and appreciation, is there any connection between that and actual dialogue and collaboration with tribal nations and some of the concerns that those nations have?
There's more than 500 tribes in this country, and all of them have different priorities. In fact, there were several that had prioritized events at the Republican National Convention because the Republicans are speaking about energy exploration as a form of sovereignty, as a form of economic development. And many tribal nations do have energy, oil and gas, coal, all kinds of energy portfolios in their investments. And so really it's about sovereignty for both nations. All tribal people want that. And where you're seeing more in the Democratic line comes from just a cultural practice of historically voting for Democrats, benefiting from services Democrats have championed and offered, but also from the viewpoint of Democrat outreach that is growing new leaders into delegate spaces. People for the first time becoming members of the delegate, becoming members of their state party, and then growing from there as they saw someone like Deb Haaland do in New Mexico to the main stage in Chicago. So she represents a pathway for a lot of Native people that is like, oh, I can do that.
Okay.
Yes, and that pathway was through the Democratic Party, because she was the head of the Democratic Party in New Mexico, ran for lieutenant governor, paid her dues, essentially. And incidentally, didn't she look gorgeous? I thought she looked spectacular on the podium there, and I was so proud to be represented by her as well.
Yeah, and that's a serious, to finish answering your question, that is where many want to take that, where that leadership group is, where they see, okay, I can do that. They're happy about the representation, but now representation is trying to get into the next stage of accountability and making sure that even those who are within those systems. I remember we had a conversation who's a recorder in Pima County in Arizona, who's an indigenous woman who represents all people, not just Native tribes in that area. And she says, like, she gets more votes from her own community than even Joe Biden did in the primary. So she's accountable at a different local level. And I think that's where if you're going to see a lot more indigenous people in local elected offices, they're going to be more accountable to the people directly in their community. It's their cousins, their aunties, their mom, their dad. And that's something that is going to need to be seen at a national level.
Understood. Now, two areas where tribal nations have a vested interest, as you mentioned, are the environment and energy production. Take a listen to the difference in rhetoric on that issue from both conventions.
I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill.
In this election, many other fundamental freedoms are at stake. The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water and live free from the pollution that fuels the climate crisis.
Now, Dee Dee, no surprise in those competing visions, but Democratic's exact position is a little bit foggy. Other speakers at the DNC echoed Harris's comments about clean air and clean water. How serious do you think the party is about transitioning to renewable energy sources in addition to cracking down on polluters, as Harris mentioned?
Oh, I think the party is very serious, dead serious about that, and especially in New Mexico, where the New Mexico legislature has set a goal to, in the Energy Transition Act, or the ETA, that, there will be 100% electricity will be 100% provided by renewables by 2050, and I think 50% by 2030. And what's happened in New Mexico, of course, is the Inflation Reduction Act has provided so much money to New Mexico projects like Maxion and others, and also tax incentives for rural electric co-ops and incentives for people to put heat pumps in their homes and energy efficient appliance and electronic vehicles. There's a real track record there that Harris can claim of putting your money where your mouth is and really trying to stimulate an alternative to oil and gas, and thus address the climate crisis, which the Republican Party, and particularly if you read the Project 2025, does not yet acknowledge as a problem. And that is really saying something, because that means that they're not trusting the science, and that's so in line with a number of other plans that will, take a wrecking ball to the EPA, not trust the science when it comes to PFAS and those toxic chemicals. So I think the Democratic Party at both the state level and the national level is dead serious and has focused investments in that area.
Okay. Sean, this week, and Dee Dee just mentioned Maxion. We spoke with reporter Justin Horwath about the state's efforts to bring Maxion here to Mesa del Sol. What role do deals like that play in here in New Mexico when creating, and nationally also, when creating platform policies on energy and on the environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a continuation of political legacies, and I think that is one we can look that's directly tied to the Biden policies of just passing the Infrastructure Act and continuing the work from that. And I think that's something you would even consider if Harris were to win again, the continuation of the policy set, bringing it back to Holland and what the Interior Department has done when it comes to environment. We've seen, a direct decrease in coal production in this country, which is a position that Republicans are talking about wanting to go back to. Right. So it's really a reversal of all the different policies we've seen that would go back to Donald Trump, or go back potentially in some ways to Harris and even Obama, which started leading a lot of the coal reduction. Yeah. It wasn't lost on me, watching from Chicago, because I was still out there, but the San Juan coal generating tower is going down. Yeah. Like, that's the end of a legacy that Republicans are asking for. That's something that Lauren Boebert told us when she told us on the radio at Native America Calling she would be the Interior Secretary if Donald Trump asked her to be, and spoke directly in opposition of the policies that would essentially just reverse the executive orders we have here and the executive actions, not just
Yes.
orders, which is unfortunately, sadly, where our political system is at. Seeing the power that the executive has and how it's leveraged by both Democrats and Republicans, and understanding that our electoral politics could just be a complete shift of all those policies, we seem to be losing the incremental progress we're making and taking many steps back.
Yes, particularly if the Republican administration does what it says it wants to do in the platform, and that is to roll back the entire Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest investment to forestall climate change ever. And they would just simply like to prevent those investments from coming to fruition. And they would be able to do that if they controlled Congress. But maybe even if they didn't control Congress, because, with the Supreme Court's Chevron decision, which will really sort of prevent the EPA and other agencies from issuing regulations of any kind to support controls on methane, for example, or controls on toxic chemicals. It's very worrisome that all that progress could be undone.
Yeah, and also the political reality of that situation. Like, Democrats and Republicans can say we want to do so much, but if a court order is going to block it, or the reality, especially when it comes to environmental regulations and protections for cleaner air and cleaner water, the reality of the U.S. system as it is may not promote that completely, and that could just be what is on the table for any administration.
Okay. I want to end with a question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Dee Dee. Are the National Democratic Party and the state party here in New Mexico, are they on the same page? One particular issue that came up looking through the platform is this is the first time that in recent history, at least, that the death penalty or other issues have not been explicitly opposed by the Democratic Party. And I know that's something in New Mexico that we focused on in the past. We talked about immigration. Are they on the same page here?
They're never on the same page. Exactly. It's just often, I think, in New Mexico, we're an immigrant state, for example, so it's natural that we're going to be, we're going to be more upset about the draconian proposals to end birthright citizenship, to deport millions of people from the United States. New Mexico has so many families where at least one parent was an immigrant. I mean, I think 10% now or 11% is the percentage here. And, those measures strike at the heart of Hispanic Democrats in New Mexico often. And they're upset about that. And we have made progress in alternative energy and in other fields. And so, yeah, I think that the state Democrats are more avid about those things, but that doesn't mean they won't support the national ticket.
Sure. How do you see the split, if there is one, between the state and the National Democratic Party right now?
I think it is natural, right? Like, it's supposed to be combative, it's supposed to be critical, there's supposed to be some conflict so you can come to terms with whatever, but it took everybody got in line to get behind Harris before the convention, even to calm the concerns of a split convention. And so I don't see the party backing away from voting for Harris or voting for any other Democrats on the ticket. In fact, I think even before Biden was going to leave, there was going to be an uptick in advance, because we've seen in so many local elections, Democrats and progressive Democrats reject MAGA policies, even centrist Democrats beating, Republican extreme viewpoints. And so that seemingly was always on the move up. And I think that's where the excitement is coming from the Democrats, is now the people who've been on the ground are like, now the ones organizing, now the ones about to lead. And so for a state like New Mexico, the party has an opportunity because everything is moving west.
Understood. Got to wrap it there. Democratic former state senator Dee Dee Feldman and Source New Mexico editor Sean Griswold. Thank you both. Great to see you again.
I'm happy to be here.